thank you, Brian. So good afternoon and welcome to those who are here and of course those who are watching the recording. This is a special webinar this week. We're celebrating the 2021 National Cybersecurity Career Awareness Week, led by the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education and the National Institute for Standards and Technology in the U.S. Department of Commerce. I am Julie DiBiasio. I am the Director of Graduate Studies at Cleveland Marshall College of Law. And we here at CM Law and the Master of Legal Studies program in Cybersecurity and Data Privacy are thrilled that you could join us today. You will hear from experts in the industry discuss their career paths, the future of this field, and we will also have time at the end for question and answer, so be sure to get your questions ready. But so without further ado, I think we should just get right into it. And it is my honor to introduce Professor Brian Ray. Brian Ray co-founded and directs the Center for Cybersecurity and Privacy Protection at Cleveland Marshall College of Law. He also teaches in this Master of Legal Studies program and was the mastermind behind creating this program. And I always hear from our students how wonderful of a professor he is and how lucky they feel to have him. So if you join this program, you will have actually every single one of these panelists today are professors, and I always hear wonderful things. So you are in great hands. So Brian, I will turn it over to you to give yourself a little more of an introduction and then introduce our two wonderful panelists.
Thanks, Julie. And I'd also like to thank NICE for inviting us to participate once again in their Cybersecurity Awareness Week. We're really excited to be part of this effort and to share our distinctive approach to teaching folks across different professions to become cybersecurity and privacy experts. And as Julie said, really excited today to have two professors in our program. Kirk Herath is recently retired as the Chief Privacy Officer at Nationwide Insurance. He comes to us from the legal side, although he's also got pretty good technical depth, and we're going to get into how he managed to do that. And then Spence Witten. Spence Witten is, I always forget your exact title, Spence. You're the Senior Vice President or Senior, give it to me.
No, I'm a Senior Advisor at 38 North.
There we go.
So
you're Senior something, even though you're young. Yeah. 38 North Security, which is a cybersecurity firm here, based here in Cleveland, Ohio. Previously, Spence was in cybersecurity, and we're going to get into more of his very interesting background in a variety of roles, but primarily working on Department of Defense, national security issues, including cybersecurity online training with a company that was acquired by Motorola. And Spence is our technical expert, but as we'll get into, Spence is not, did not come from a technical background. And so that's essentially what we want to talk about today is, if you want to get into this field, or even if you're already into this field, what are the range of skill sets you need? And why do you need more than technical knowledge? And why is it possible to get into this field, even if you don't have a strong technical background? And so we're going to learn more about these two gentlemen. I say that loosely, and their backgrounds, and talk about how they got into this field, or these fields. Cybersecurity and data privacy are overlapping but distinct, and then get their advice on what they would look for as professionals in the field, hiring people at the junior level, and how to advance in the field. And so let's jump right in. And Kirk, let's start with you. As I said before, you're a lawyer, I'm a lawyer. How is it that a lawyer gets involved in this area? And why is it useful to either be a lawyer or have a legal background?
Well, thank you, Brian. I will say before I start that while Spence didn't have a technical background, so he claims. He is.
we think he studied somewhere.
I think like the CIA took him and like gave him a mind meld with every supercomputer under the sun. Probably the smartest, one of the smartest people I've known, and a privilege to work with him from time to time. I discovered I discovered privacy very similar to how Columbus discovered North America. It was there right in front of our eyes, and I worked on it. Fortunately, I was a legislative person in the late '80s, early and through the '90s, i.e., a lobbyist. And I had the privilege, really, of working on two of the most seminal pieces of privacy. They wasn't privacy legislation predominantly, but the two core laws that kind of drive the largest sectoral privacy in the United States, and that is HIPAA in the early '90s, which was health insurance reform, portability, and all that good stuff. And then Gramm-Leach-Bliley, which really was at the tail end of the '90s, literally passed in late November of '99. And because I had worked on those bills, as a young man, I was interested in the data sharing, data security, what we eventually coined as privacy, the use of data by companies to provide and service their customers with products and services. So data, I was in the insurance industry. Data was our lifeblood. So I wanted to make sure that whatever came out of those two laws was balanced between the consumers and the business in a way that it would certainly, we didn't want to destroy privacy rights, but we wanted to maintain enough use of the data that we could continue to provide products and services for our customers. So there I was, I had led a small, because in the mid '90s, I had convinced our CEO and his cabinet to give me some resources to kind of follow what we were calling privacy and or data use. And I had a small kind of a working group within Nationwide, a cross-functional of actuaries and claims people and lawyers. And even though I was a lawyer at the time, I wasn't actually practicing law for Nationwide. The legislative and the legal functions are separate. Marketers and technology people, and I don't know, it was like 10 to 12 or 15. It just sort of depended on the month that when we met. But we would share ideas. But when Gramm-Leach-Bliley passed, and we actually had to do something. We had to comply with Gramm-Leach-Bliley, because even though HIPAA had happened years before, 5 or 6 years before, we were now in the 5th or 6th year of waiting for the regulations from HHS. We didn't know what to shoot at, so nobody was really trying to comply with HIPAA in November of '99. But we did know that we had some compliance objectives for Gramm-Leach-Bliley. And so they asked me, as the only person sort of there who had a group of people that had talked about privacy and thought about privacy, they asked me if I wanted to be the project leader of the privacy compliance project, right? It was going to be a project, like it was ever going to be over. And I honestly,
one and done.
Yeah, one and done. We're just going to put this in place.
We're going to get privacy.
We're going to hit the button and it's going to go, make the privacy machine. I was probably about a year into this endeavor. It probably was a little less than a year for me personally, but then I had to kind of go to my boss, who was our general counsel, and suggest to her that this was not a project. This was indeed a program. And it was like the song that never ends, right? It was not ever going to be over. It was going to evolve. And then she asked me, would I be interested in doing that? And I really thought, like, for about half a second, I said, yes, I would love to do this. I like to build things. And as a lobbyist, you don't get to build much, really. It's kind of a negative job. But so that began the journey. And I did that for the next, really from early 2000 until I retired at the end of 20. And that was my job for 20 years. And it evolved over that time, right? It was just me. I was the Army of One in March of 2000. And by the time I ended, I had 22 people in my group. We did things like within a couple of years, I realized that cybersecurity was incredibly important to my program. The old adage, you can have security without privacy, but you cannot have privacy without that security became very apparent to me. I also realized they had legal needs that nobody in the corporation was addressing. So there was this, what I used to call white space, right? You'd move into it because nobody wants to fight a turf war with another group of lawyers, compliance people over a kind of an old law that everybody sort of knows what they're doing on. So I moved into white space and convinced the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer at the time, who continues to be a very good friend of mine, Jack Jones, that he needed a lawyer. And he saw right away there was some validity to that, and there were some benefits to it because I was able to write legal opinions to get him resources and people and grow his program over the years. Because I had this sort of bridgehead into the technology area, and the technology area, as Spence can attest, and the lawyers generally hate each other. I mean, it's not even a love-hate relationship. It's actually sort of a full-on hate-hate relationship. Our CIO became so enraged by the other legal groups at Nationwide who he thought were sort of, meddling in his place. It was like the death by 1,000 lawyers, as he told our general counsel. That our general counsel asked me if I would, she kind of like threw in the towel and said, he said, I want one lawyer. I want one area where I go for all of my technology, and that person then runs all the traps with all the other lawyers and compliance areas and comes back and assembles sort of a single legal compliance vision for anything we were going to do. So that was around 2008-9. So I became essentially the general counsel for our technology, information security and technology areas, about 10,000 people, a couple $2 billion worth of purchasing. Along with that came the procurement lawyers who bought all this technology, and then kind of tangentially some marketing, preference management, TCPA, do not call, those sort of things kind of came to me organically as well. So again, I sort of have, by 2010, the unit that I left in 2020 kind of was in fashion, but we only had I think we had a total of about 8 people trying to do all this stuff. So little by little over the next decade, we added about another 10, 12 people. And, it's been a very good, it was a very good career, and learned a lot of good stuff, met a lot of good people. I now have a love relationship with my technology partner, and I can guarantee you that while we didn't always see eye to eye on everything, we worked into a very collegial, collaborative relationship. So that's a little bit more of how I got to where I got, and we can talk a little bit more about other stuff. But after Spence talks about how he got.
No, that's excellent, and it nicely illustrates the fact that you can either have that love-hate or you can have that collaborative relationship, and a lot of it's about communication and learning to speak each other's language, so that you're not just as the compliance legal person issuing an edict without understanding how that's going to affect how the technology actually functions, or whether it's even doable, right?
Everybody has their own love language, right?
Yeah, there we go. So let's get Spence's love language into this. We didn't know it's February and we're on the dating game, but Spence, give us the technologist perspective, and actually give us your background, because in all seriousness, as Kirk said, it's pretty remarkable. You are one of the most expert technologists I know of, and you don't have a CS degree or anything close to it, but yeah, give us your
everybody's being way too generous. I appreciate this, and so and thanks, Kirk, for the wonderful introduction that you gave here. I think one of the things I actually really want to plug about the program where we work is it should be obvious now that not only do us three, but then all the professors in our program just get along really well. We have a lot of experience working together outside of academia to do stuff in the real world, right? And so I think that's it's really impactful for it really helps us it helps what we bring to the program, right? Because, folks like Kirk who've been doing this from the beginning. I mean, Kirk's been, working privacy and security issues since before people were really thinking holistically about privacy and security. Brian has dove into cybersecurity right when, even before it was a fad in security. I mean, Brian's been doing security stuff now on the legal side for 15 years now, I think. Maybe
No,
even longer. And
8.
What's that, Brian?
8.
No, 15.
You're giving me too much credit. It feels like 15, but actually, before you get going, let me give a quick shout out. That's a great point. The three of us got to know each other through a great organization, Cyber Ohio, which was created by then Attorney General Mike DeWine, who's now the governor of Ohio. And really, that it was interesting that Ohio's first organized, centralized Cyber Ohio group, policy group, was created in the AG's office, but underscores this connection, also DeWine's sort of vision and understanding that cybersecurity was a huge threat to the state. And so, and Kirk has led that effort. We've passed one law. We're trying to pass a privacy law now. Anyways, just wanted to make that connection explicit. But keep going, Spence.
And I think it's really important for our degree program, particularly because we are focused on adult education, and this ties back to the work that NICE does too. We bring a whole ton of real world experience in addition to a wonderful academic background provided by Cleveland State and the Cleveland Marshall College of Law to this challenge. And cybersecurity ultimately is a multidisciplinary issue and challenge. And so to segue into my background, what I really wanted to do in college is I wanted to work in the intelligence community as an intelligence analyst. That was my focus in college. It was my focus coming out of high school. And so I learned the basic skills you needed to do that, right? I became a really good writer, particularly briefing style writing. And I got really good at giving, verbal briefings. And did the internships and did all the things we were supposed to do. But, ultimately coming out of college and starting in the work world, it just didn't, it wasn't a perfect fit, right? And so I ended up in venture capital, and I was a venture capital consultant. And I still kind of harbored the idea of getting back into the intelligence community, in venture capital. I just, wanted to work with small businesses and on the technology side, even though I wasn't a technologist. And, what I learned in working on the venture capital consulting side is that, with the right attitude and the right curiosity, you can jump into technical fields, and you can learn what you need to learn at at least a high level to start having informed opinions about that technology and how it should be used. And so I got comfortable with technical concepts at a high level when I worked in venture capital consulting, and then 2008 happened, right? And so venture capital consulting obviously disappeared along with a whole bunch of other areas of our financial sector, and I was looking for a job. And I randomly stumbled into cybersecurity. And I will tell you, it was, I put a resume out online and I got a hit early on from this cybersecurity company, and I ignored it because it sounded super boring. It sounded like something I wanted absolutely nothing to do with, right? And so a couple of weeks later, it was a slow day on the job boards. And so I circled back to that job and I was like, well, maybe I should go ahead and apply. The economy's kind of cratering right now. It's not like, opportunities are falling out of the sky. And, I went in and I interviewed. And after my interview, it sounded equally as boring, but I ended up taking the job. And I quickly discovered that it's actually not boring at all. And it was with a small company, mostly working with the government, but we were an early competitor to FireEye. So FireEye sells a malware detection solution. So we were an early competitor to FireEye. Obviously, we did not win that battle. Otherwise, I'd be on this webinar from my yacht in the Mediterranean. But I learned a whole ton. And what I quickly learned is that a lot of cybersecurity is really hard, right? Like there's this tip of the iceberg where there are some true technical geniuses at play, but underneath that, there's a whole ton of work that happens on a day-to-day basis. I kind of compare it to being an auto mechanic, right? Yeah, there's some people that are designing like the new breed of cars that are just absolutely outstanding, right? And those people are geniuses, and God bless them. I'm thrilled that we have them. We're lucky to have them. They're great, right? But there's a whole ton of work that happens underneath that's equally as important. And the analogy I like to give students is that you could go out and you could try to change the brakes in your car, right? And if you absolutely knew nothing about what you were doing and you tried to change the brakes in your car, you'd probably wind up dead, right? It would end up really poorly. But I'm also equally confident that anybody with the right teacher willing to sit down and talk to them, and the right attitude about learning, like willing to go out on YouTube and like learn a few things about how brakes work, could learn how to change their brakes in the car, right? And a lot of cybersecurity is the same way. And so throughout my career in cybersecurity, I started kind of in a policy and briefing role. I transitioned into basic task management, so I was running some cybersecurity, mostly compliance tasks. Then I was running federal programs. Then that company, we sold that company, and I went to go run federal programs for another cybersecurity company that was far more technical. So we were doing more, technical operations, malware analysis work. I ran federal programs for them for a while, and then we sold to Motorola, and now I'm a cloud security architect. So I started, it's a long story short. There's a lot of twists and turns in there, but I learned to be a good communicator, because that's always critical, right? Particularly, as Kirk mentions, where there are really important linchpin roles between security and compliance and technical folks. And then while I was in that role, as mostly on the communications and policy side, I learned enough about the cybersecurity technical side to not be scared of it anymore, right? And I think that's really what it boils down to, is that you need to get to this mindset where, even though you don't know it, right? You're not scared of it anymore. You're not scared of going out and trying to change your own oil in the car, or change your own brakes, or more importantly, taking your car to the mechanic and being able to talk to an expert mechanic with a base level of knowledge that you need, to have a reasonable conversation with them and to kind of understand the lay of the land. And, I quickly learned that, yes, with some work, not a whole ton of work. It's not like I was working, 80 hours a week to learn this stuff. But, just slowly chipping away at it over time, learning some technical skills, meeting smart technical folks who are willing to teach, taking programs like we have at Cleveland State. I learned that you really can learn this stuff. And in my role today, it is actually really technical. I work with large cloud service providers to design secure clouds. And then I also work with the compliance folks on the other side to make sure that those clouds comply with not just US regulations, but federal regulatory requirements. And I'll tell you, it is a blast. I get to meet awesome people. I get to meet great lawyers and compliance people. I get to meet wonderful technologists. I get to meet, developers who aren't security folks at all, but just are working to build cool solutions. And I help them make that secure. So it's a wonderful career field. And for the attendees who are not technical, just like I said, you can go learn how to change the brakes in your car yourself with the right teacher and the right attitude. You can do that with most of cybersecurity. These are skills that you can learn. They're techniques you can learn. And I encourage you to do so, either through Cleveland State or through some of the resources provided by NICE, which has a wonderful framework for walking you through career progressions in cybersecurity. But there are ways to chip away at this. And I encourage anyone who's interested in the field to start taking those steps.
Excellent. So,
back to you, Brian.
As you've heard, we've got two folks coming from very different orientations, very different experiences. One, Spence, ending up in a really deeply technical role as a cloud security architect, essentially self-taught, which is not uncommon. Even folks that that start out wanting to be techies, because of the high demand, often you get enough some basic skills and people ready to hire you pretty quickly. And then Kirk, from the legal side, getting that very sophisticated legal understanding, and then beginning to work with a CISO, which at that time, I don't think there were very many, as Kirk said, most lawyers were fighting with the technical people. There weren't the collaborations. Now it's Kirk, what do you say? It's certainly commonplace, right? You've got to have a team. Nobody's doing security, certainly not doing privacy, without having an integrated cross-sectional team, right?
They aren't doing it successfully, that's for sure.
Yeah. Nobody's assuming that the CISO is doing this solo. I
will tell you, and Spence can probably answer his own, but it is. I still run into. I run into more people than not who do not get along, either from the security side who don't get along with their legal folks, or from the legal side who don't get along with their security folks. They seem to, and I'll tell you what, the one major friction or conflict point is they seem almost like they're afraid of each other. It's a power thing, I think, as much as anything. It's like they're going to try to duplicate my job. There's no duplication that goes on here. In fact, one of the reasons I didn't get it like a CISSP, which is a very it's a security certification that a lot of security folks have. one of the reasons I actually purposely didn't get it, even though I have all kinds of books here on my shelves, is because I didn't want to compete with them. I didn't want them to think that I was trying to compete with them. They have a role, I have a role. They bring facts to me. I look at the law and I try to interpret those facts to tell them whether or not they are above or below that line that we need to stay at to be compliant with the law. And so it is certainly, you need to know enough about what they do. And I did. I mean, after 20 years, frankly, if you were just, through osmosis, if you just sit in those rooms and participate in it.
You listen.
Yeah, you listen, right? What do lawyers do? I mean, Spence hit it on the head, right? I mean, listening, writing, and being able to, to talk well on your feet are wonderful skills. In fact, frankly, I have found that the generalists typically make the better senior security folks in organizations, because they generally have come from a policy or a compliance sort of background, and have had to explain things succinctly and simply, for decision makers for years. And so, almost if you come at it too technically and you don't have the well-honed communication skills, that is a problem, right? I used to joke, there's another profession in the insurance industry, it's called actuarial sciences. These guys are smart, and they're smart, right? But they tend to be somewhere on the spectrum. And they don't tend to be great communicators. They don't. I mean, they are brilliant. They're mathematicians generally. I used to say, what do you call an actuary with a good personality? A senior vice president, right? I mean, because they naturally rise to the top of that profession. I think it's the same thing in cybersecurity. So not having a deep technical background, I'm not going to say that technical isn't important, but it's you definitely can get there, as Spence said, and I've observed it multiple times over my career.
Well, and on the flip side, I mean, one of the things that we emphasize is if you've got the technical chops, as you mentioned, if you want to move up the ranks and become a decision maker and work across, you got to get those communications. So you have to be able to understand how the deep lawyers talk and think. Go ahead, Spence.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think inexperienced or bad, right? But inexperienced, we'll say that fairly. Inexperienced lawyers and inexperienced cybersecurity people, or bad lawyers and bad cybersecurity people, share this one really difficult trait, right? They just love to say no. And it's the same.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons why it's oil and water is sometimes it's actually just oil and oil. It's just different breeds of oil, right? They're just screaming no at each other. And I know that's really frustrating on the technical side when it's a lawyer, right? When you get a lawyer who doesn't necessarily see the big picture or isn't experienced enough to problem solve and be like, okay, right, I see what it is you're trying to do. You can't do it that way because of X, Y, and Z, and here's the reasons why you can't do it. But if we modified our approach and we looked at it from this way, we can achieve the same end result with a approach that's compliant or not going to fall afoul of any of the bazillion overlapping, sometimes contradictory state laws that chief privacy officers have to deal with. And secure and internal enterprise compliance people have to deal with. And so I think the key there is to, I think a dose of humility, which is not common to the legal fields or the cybersecurity field. You have to, understand that you can be wrong, and you have to approach every conversation willing to learn from the other side. And you have to have that problem-solving mindset. And so I really think that is something, to get back to Kirk's point, because it's spot on the generalist side, right? I think generalists are more likely to bring that than people who are, either super focused on the law or super focused on the technical side. Generalists tend to see the big picture a little bit better. And so I also think that's something that can be learned, sometimes the hard way, right? I don't feel like, I kind of tell people on the career side, I was kind of a danger to myself and others professionally for like the first 5 years of my job life, right? Like I shouldn't have been trusted with a big boy job just because I didn't really see the big picture, right? And then slowly over time, and not, it's not, because I was lazy or not because I was, dumber than everybody else. It's just, there's runtime, right? Like you gotta get the opportunity to see this. And I think it's really critical in security that brings together so many different viewpoints. And so, I think, Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big reason why there's so much tension, though, between lawyers and security is that, the inexperienced folks who don't necessarily see the big picture and don't necessarily bring that kind of humble, I want to solve problems and serve my organization attitude, do tend to cause conflicts. And so I encourage everyone who's looking at cybersecurity, even if you feel like you're a technical genius, right? Like, don't be shy about building the other skills, just like as if you don't feel like you're strong on the technical side, don't be shy or scared of trying to build those skills, because it really does make you a better team member. It makes you a better, contributor. And like Kirk said, right, it tends to rocket you up the career growth path too, when you can, cultivate that attitude and bring that to the table.
Yeah. I mean, what I tell, oh, go ahead, Kirk.
I was just saying that, your point is well, and I don't want anybody to misinterpret that I think that I met many very highly technical people who are very good at communicating and doing their job. And frankly, most lawyers are, people have this vision of lawyers like being in the courtroom, being able to communicate. Most lawyers communicate very, very poorly. And they're very frustrated because they don't get a lot of the recognition so communication skills is important in any business and any profession. I'll say that I think to add to what Spence said, cross-functional skills, and that's what this program, my observation it's the cross-functional skills. It's the policy skills, the writing skills, coupled with the technology skills that you get, particularly from Spence's programs. That's where I think this program it can be differentiated against a lot of other types of programs like this, and why this is, in my estimate, I will say it, Brian, you don't pay me a lot, so
I don't.
I wouldn't be
I don't set the rate.
This is a labor of love. I would not be doing this if I didn't think this was effective. And I think you have put together, at least in my mind, one of the most effective kind of fusion programs between security, privacy, or the law and technology of any that are out there.
Well, I appreciate that. And actually, that brings us to a question we've got from a high school student in our who's an attendee with us. He wants to know, he likes computer science, wants to be a cybersecurity expert. What should he do, right? And so let's get a little more explicit. We've talked about these sort of softer skills and the need to be cross-functional. Let's get very specific. And Spence, let me start with you. If someone's in high school and they're interested in the technical side, how do they build that skill set?
I think I will take the technical question, but I also want to stay on the generalist side too, because I think like a mistake I made in high school, right? So a mistake I made in high school is that I was so laser focused on this one thing, right? And I didn't, to the exclusion of not only building other useful skills, but perhaps ignoring things that I also really like. So I think the first thing to do is to absolutely have an extremely open mind, be very honest with yourself about what you like to do. And, if you love practicing piano on the side, like, don't drop that in pursuit of technical skills. If you, do art or sports on the side, like, definitely don't drop those things. Like, cultivate that mentality where you're building a diverse skill set, because cybersecurity is absolutely 100% a multidisciplinary challenge. So we're going to sound like a broken record throughout this presentation because of that, but we're going to keep driving that point home. So the first thing is when I give you this technical advice, like, don't go devote all your free hours to just doing that. Like, make sure to focus on being that well-rounded person, because that is ultimately, maybe not immediately, but ultimately going to pay those long-term dividends, right? So on the technical side, what's really cool about cybersecurity, perhaps even more so than a lot of technical areas, right? Like, if you really love nuclear engineering, well, guess what? You're out of luck, right? You're not building a nuclear power plant in your backyard. But it is really easy to build virtualized networks at home. You can do it in the cloud. You can get on YouTube and learn how to do all this stuff. And you can start building some of the basic, environments, and you can download free tools to start playing around. And I think it's really, like, in my Cyber 1 class, even with our totally non-technical folks, right? I have them download something called Kali Linux. I have them start playing around with cybersecurity tools. I mean, really lightly stuff. It's really light stuff, but for a lot of these folks, it kind of blows their mind, right? Like they've never played with computers at that level. It's an entirely different way of interacting with computers. One of the analogies I use is like, it's, you know, all of us are computer, you know, savvy at this point, right? We're on a Zoom call. I mean, you can't have to at least know how to turn on a computer to get on Zoom, right? But it's like if you were playing at the beach, you spent your entire life playing at the beach and you love the beach and you know, waded into the water and you know, played in the sandbars and, you know, that's pretty cool. But one day someone hands you a scuba tank and throws you in the water, right? So it's still the ocean, right? It's still the same general ecosystem, but it is a totally different way of looking at the world. And so I think it's really important to start putting your toe in on the technical side with that stuff now. And it's not just for high school students. I don't care if you're, you know, 70 years old. If you're interested in cybersecurity, don't be shy. You know, get on YouTube, just Google how to install Kali Linux, right? How to set up a home test lab for cybersecurity. You'll find all sorts of great tutorials, and just start playing around, and don't be shy about doing that. At the same time, I do have to say, be cautious, right? Because the tools that you can download online are professional tools. I mean, you could point them at the FBI and wind up in a whole ton of trouble. So, you know, you need to be cautious about it. But at the same time, everything you need, if you're on a Zoom call, you have everything you need to start exploring the technical side of cybersecurity. It doesn't require supercomputers. It doesn't even require a budget. Like most of the tools to start playing with are free. You know, just start doing it. Just go try. I think then, you know, the next advanced step, certifications really help. So for intro level folks, you know, when I'm looking at an intro resume, and I'll see, you know, typical intro type, junior level experience, you know, maybe file clerk at a law firm, maybe, you know, basic IT help desk stuff. You know, I will interview the candidate that, you know, went out and got some certs, right? Because that shows me, wow, actually they're interested enough to have bought a book or taken a class and learned enough to pass this exam. So certs are not end all be all, but that would be my next step, because that really jumps out to me when I'm looking at junior level resumes. Because, you know, you're not going to go be able, like, Google's not going to hire you to be a security engineer. I'm not expecting to see that on your resume, but I do expect that you've taken some formal steps to demonstrate your expertise, above and beyond going to school and getting a degree, right? It's really cool when I see, oh, wow, like, you know, this junior candidate went out and got an AWS security cert. Like, that's great. Like, you can do it on your own. It doesn't cost a lot of money. I think the certification exam is $100. The study materials are free, but, you know, they went out and did it. Like, that's, you know, hey, that says something to me, and I give you an interview. I give you your shot.
Yeah, and Kirk, same question to you. Especially if you're coming from a non-technical side, but you're interested in this area, what do you look for? What did you look for when you were hiring junior level people into the compliance and multifunctional team that you had?
Well, I mean, this is not really for the high school student, but you know, I look for, back to the certifications. First of all, you know, did they have any as Spence said, did they have any demonstrable kind of experience? And it didn't have to be even in privacy. You know, did they have any experience in a related field that would demonstrate they had the skills to, you know, to problem solve? And I agree with Spence used that term earlier, and I've described myself. I used to tell my teams, guys, we're problem solvers here, right? No is not an answer. There's only been a couple times in my entire career where I said no, and that was typically where, unbeknownst to the business person, they were, you know, committing a crime. All right, crimes are no. It's only happened.
It's a no.
Yeah, crimes are no. Everything else is, let's try to solve their problem, and then it's based about the risk. It's based upon the tolerance for the company or the people who are doing something. Right? There is no zero risk in anything. Right? In fact, not doing something often is more risky than doing something. And if you can wrap your head around that, a lot of lawyers, again, don't understand that. Right? They say, well, there's risk there. Well, yeah, there's risk there, but there's also, it's like if you're on a track and a train's coming at you. You gotta get off the track, right? I mean, there may be a cliff to your right, there may be a river to your left, right? You're gonna have to choose one of those two paths, because you could do a couple different things. You can run away from the train, eventually the train will catch you and hit you. You can stay where you are, the train will hit you, or you can jump off into the abyss and you may survive, but your chances maybe are better in the river if you can swim, right? So go that way maybe. Privacy certifications are kind of a de rigueur these days. The CIPP US is the entry one that I would look for. Again, all things being equal, I would hire someone as long as as long as there was sort of that fit that we all know, like the person wasn't dislikable personally, which does happen, unfortunately, every once in a while. That CIPP was the differentiator. All things being equal, you would go with the candidate who, as Spence said, had shown enough, chutzpah to go out and get it on their own. I looked for things too in the certified information security auditor. I hired several paralegals who were CISA. I mean, what a lot of the stuff that we did was sort of tangential to the systems auditor. We would just look at it with a slightly different lens. We would often be helping them actually build out the policies and the procedures and that we're going to be audited. So it was good to kind of have that auditor mindset. As I said earlier, the CISSP, Certified Information Security Systems Professional, that one was, I think it's still, I think it's been devalued somewhat over the years, but it's still considered somewhat the gold standard. And then there are all kinds of other sort of like, experts and friends. The guy that ran my incident management program for 15 years was a certified forensic expert. I mean, I met him because he was doing the forensics on potential breaches in my company. Got to know him real well, smart as heck. I needed somebody to run my breach response unit after California passed their law and then everybody else started passing theirs and we were getting eat alive. I needed somebody to actually help me build a process and a program around that. And he was phenomenal. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to get into this profession that aren't sort of a straight line. And, I encourage you, as, Spence did, to anything that you can demonstrate that you've done. But certifications are definitely those, all things being equal, and some of them cost more than others. Definitely. When my kids were in high school, I mean, this was actually 10, 15 years ago now, right? I mean, we paid a little bit of money and they got all of the Microsoft certifications, right? Just because I thought, well, okay, if you know how to do PowerPoints, you know how to do Excel, you know how to work in Word, right? Those are things that a lot of people don't know how to do. Maybe Word, but Excel's not something that everybody knows how to do. PowerPoint, I mean, I'm a above average novice, right? But some people are like Picasso with PowerPoint, and those are the people. Back to communicating. I knew a very senior person at Nationwide that ended up getting on that trajectory because they were the PowerPoint person for a very senior officer and could make his presentations look phenomenal. I'm serious. No, he had others.
Beach. Yeah.
He had.
So we're getting close to the end, and we want to give Julie some time before we close to give folks information more specifically about our program. But we've been talking a lot about certs, and I just want to close out our discussion real quick. What's then the benefit of a full-on degree program like the one that we offer? And Spence, I'll kick it to you. 2 minutes, Kirk, 2 minutes, and then we'll head back to Julie to explain to people how they can get involved in our program if they're interested.
So I think now what most people who came up in cybersecurity, like in software development, were self-taught, right? I'm one of them. But the field has gotten so complicated that I don't know that my path anymore is the operative mode to succeed in cybersecurity. I think particularly with our program, right? Because we've emphasized the multidisciplinary aspect. You need to, have that inch deep, mile wide familiarity with cybersecurity. So it's get you in the door, right? But B, so you can start thinking, because another question that we wanted to cover was career advice. Well, the field is specialized, and so having that foundation that you can really only get from a concentrated degree program will give you an idea of the path you want to take. because, you know, now, I mean, we go into even mid-sized companies, like they'll have people that are dedicated to access control security. And then they'll have folks like, you know, Kirk mentioned, who are dedicated to forensics. And then you'll have, you know, malware analysts over here, and then you'll have incident responders in the middle. And it's just getting really, really specialized. And so you need to be comfortable, conversant in all those different languages and all those different disciplines, and then start thinking about the ones you like the most to just continue building your skills in. Because this is a, you know, what you won't get from any degree program anywhere, I don't care where you go, is, you know, all the knowledge you need to be successful in the future. This is a continually changing field. This is a continuous learning thing. But truthfully, I love that. I think that's one of the things that makes cybersecurity exciting. But I believe that degree programs now specialized in cybersecurity will give you that diversity of, you know, touches across the non-technical and the technical sides of cybersecurity to really set you up for success. I don't know that my path up is, you know, as possible as it was, you know, 15 years ago when nobody, you know, just nobody knew about cybersecurity, right? Like it was, you know, anybody, if you could put two sentences together and have a pulse, you know, you could probably get a job. And while there are still a ton of jobs in cybersecurity, there is an expectation that you have that conversant familiarity across all the disciplines to get started. And that's what we try to give, you know, while we, you know, are very focused on the legal side, we still try to make sure that our students come out with exactly that grounding, you know, when they graduate.
Excellent. Kirk?
I disagree with nothing that Spence said, but I'm coming at it from a different angle. Although I think he still said what I'm going to say here. So, you know, what the MLS program provides you is a kind of demonstrates a minimum level of competence in a multiplicity of different skills. And then it demonstrates, you know, obviously a high interest in this area, right? I mean, we all want people, we spend a lot of time working together. We all want people who have passion around what they do. And, you know, the one thing that I've heard from Spence and that I'll basically say here, I mean, I love this. This probably is the closest thing to fighting a war or fighting terrorism without having a gun in your hand. I mean, every day is a new set of problems and concerns, and it's a high stress. It can be a high stress job. So I do think, but it's sort of an inverted. I do agree with Spence that it's there. Ultimately, we specialize. So you start out with the sort of a, you know, here's where you are in the MLS, right? It's broad. You learn everything. You show competence in it, and then as you get into it, right, you're going to say, well, gosh, you know, I'm more interested in that than this, and then you can dive into that a little deeper through co-ops or whatever. The other thing is, I mean, guys, you know, the professors and the personnel who are involved in the program and our networks, our combined networks are impressive as heck. And we can help probably more than it has been my experience to date, although I've helped several. We will help you connect with people who have jobs in this area. And, you know, and I think that at the end of the day, that's where the rubber meets the road is operationalizing all this education and getting your foot in the door, getting your first job, and then getting going.
Excellent. Well, with that, I want to thank both of you for taking the time to join us and talk about cybersecurity and privacy careers. And once again, thank NICE for hosting us and allowing us to be part of this great Cybersecurity Awareness Week. I'm going to kick it back to Julie to quickly walk us through, and actually Julie and I will both walk you through the curriculum of our specific program. We'll give you a little more detail, and then we'll tell you how you can apply if you're interested. So actually, Julie, I'll take the curriculum slide, and then I'll let you close us out with information on how to apply. So as we've talked about several times today, we really have a fantastic group of professors. Kirk's one of them, Spence is one of them. Really, those two have been key to building those two sides of the program, privacy and cybersecurity. But it's a 30 credit, 10 course program that currently has a set 10 courses. We're looking to add some possible electives for people who want to go a little deeper on the technical or want to stay within the legal side of things. But as it stands now, it gives you that 360 degree view that both Spence and Kirk mentioned of the various domains, with an emphasis on the legal and policy, because of course we're a law school, and that's where our strength lies. And so to start, you take Introduction to American Law and Cybersecurity 1. Introduction to American Law is a course I created specifically for this program. It gives you an overview of, it's a kind of boot camp in law. Most of the topics that you would hit as a first-year law student, obviously not as much in depth, and then several other topics that are relevant to cybersecurity and data privacy that really set the groundwork for then the upper level courses. Cybersecurity 1 is a course that Spence recreated for us. All these courses we teach also within the JD program. Cybersecurity 1, you jump pretty quickly into the deep end. Spence mentioned the Kali Linux labs. You get real hands-on experience in playing around with some technical tools while also learning a general overview of cybersecurity from a technical perspective. After that, then, the precise sequence differs depending on when you enter the program, but legal writing is the second foundational course in the law side, where you'll learn to go in depth with legal materials, how to do your own research, how to both consume, read, and produce to some extent legal materials that a legal professional would understand, and to really do legal analysis at a more in-depth level, because it's not just the lawyers that do legal analysis. The technical folks who are really good, especially as you move up the senior ranks, know how to talk to the lawyers and know how to present the facts that they're uncovering in ways that fit that framework. And so they won't do the final analysis, but it's really helpful if you can talk in an intelligent way and set up that analysis in a way that just makes for a better work product. And so those two courses give you that. Cybersecurity 2 builds directly on Cybersecurity 1, goes back over the same information to intensify it and make sure you've got a firm grasp on it. And then you work on a project where you're building the technical controls for a large research university that has multiple overlapping compliance obligations. Again, not from a legal perspective, but from a technical perspective. What are the things you would do to comply as a technical matter with these requirements? And again, that's something that would happen in conversation with a lawyer. Privacy law and management then is the kind of core upper level legal course. Kirk and I co-created that. I was really fortunate. Kirk came to me right as he retired and said, "Hey, I'd love to teach." And it turned out I was going to create this course and thought it would be much better for a professional who's got the depth of experience that Kirk has to really teach it. So I basically interview him in the course. That's how we created it together. And now it's his course. And it's a survey of all the major legal areas in privacy, focused on the US, although we do get into GDPR and Europe in one of the modules. And then corporate compliance 1 and 2 are paired courses where you take the lens out specifically from privacy and cybersecurity and look at how a compliance program works in general and how privacy and cybersecurity fit into that. And so that compliance, problem solving mindset that we talked about is key. And so we've got really 3 courses there. Privacy law and management is deep on the substance of privacy and cybersecurity. Corporate compliance 1 and 2, as I said, pull back and give you that bigger perspective. And then HIPAA and privacy is a deep dive into still the most extensive privacy and cybersecurity law in the US. HIPAA, it was one of the first, as Kirk mentioned, along with GLBA, and it still is the most intense and the most prescriptive. And so if you can understand how to comply with HIPAA, it really lays the groundwork to be able to comply with almost any other cybersecurity law, because ultimately, at least in the US, all of them map back to the NIST framework, which NICE is a part of NIST. And the NIST framework is a really influential cybersecurity framework that is influential both on the technical and the legal sides. Cyber law then takes you out and begins to look at the international, national security, and criminal law dimensions of cybersecurity. It's taught by a professor who is a former member of Cyber Command in the Navy in the Air Force, and now teaches at the Air Force Academy. And then the technical capstone is another of the courses that Spence created to add further depth. And you take that towards the end, usually in your last semester with us, builds directly on Cybersecurity 1 and 2 and goes even deeper. And that is a course that we've created using Ohio's cyber range, which we're part of, which has a lot more technical capabilities than we have here at Cleveland State, and allows you to go into even more in-depth in those technical areas, and it maps lightly to the certified ethical hacker. We talked a lot about certifications. None of our courses directly provide you with a certification, but several of them, privacy law and management, really prepares you for taking the CIPP that Kirk mentioned. The technical capstone gives you a solid grounding in the certified ethical hacker certification, and cybersecurity 1 and 2 in combination really cover most of the topics you'd see in the CISSP. And so the certifications are things we encourage students to do in addition, so that especially if you're at the entry level, you'll have that credential that is easily understandable to anybody in the industry. But you're getting that much bigger picture. We're going much more into depth, and we're sort of creating those connections among the various disciplines that you'll work with or work in as a cybersecurity professional. Okay, with that, I will give it to Julie and let her close us out with explanation of how to get more information or apply if you're interested.
Thanks, Brian. But real quick, I do want to mention Cynthia asked 2 questions in the Q&A.
Oh, I missed that. I'm sorry, Cynthia.
No problem. So I can read them to you. So do you cover any consolidated security frameworks like HITRUST in our program? And does the program cover recent court rulings, executive orders, congressional or Senate bills?
So we do, the HIPAA and privacy course does get into HITRUST, and all of the cybersecurity 1 and 2, privacy law and management. We do talk about the frameworks quite a bit. We get into the, again, especially the NIST framework, but we get into a lot of the frameworks. And yes, I mean, absolutely, current case law. If I'm trying to find the question myself, but certainly current case law is and executive orders and pending legislation are things that we certainly bring into play and discuss. I mean, that's and we're constantly updating. Kirk's already working with pricing law and management to get the new state laws that are in, and that's something that we absolutely pay close attention to and bring into play. I don't know if Spence and Kirk, you want to address those real quick or anything to add?
I take a broad look in Cyber 1. We take a broad look at a number of different compliance standards that are common. So HIPAA, the HIPAA class is wonderful because HIPAA is just a great framework for touching lots of different issues in cybersecurity. But like, for example, I'm in cloud. So, FedRAMP and then some of the international standards, like Australia IRAP and Canada Protected B, I address. Also, I'd love to do a little bit more. So like I'm currently adding to Cyber 1 in the background, and I'm going to add in some of those more international comparative frameworks there. But I mean, I think you get an inch deep, mile wide on all of them. But definitely go deeper on HIPAA in privacy, that dedicated class.
Yeah, I have not addressed HITRUST per se in the privacy law and operations, but that's a good idea. I was I'm not going to teach this again, I think, until next summer, just because of the new cycle. But one of the things I was going to add was the NIST privacy standard, our framework, and it would be maybe that would be a nice place to also talk about some other frameworks like HITRUST. So yeah, I definitely am going to be talking about some of these standards in the next iteration, starting I guess next May.
Excellent. All right, so Julie, with 1 minute, I'll let you put up the slide and tell folks how to get more information and apply.
Yes, good. I'll be very quick. So basically, I do want everyone to know that if you have any more questions about the curriculum or, of course, the application process, to reach out to any of us on the call. My contact information will be on the next slide. But if you're inspired today to start this program, our next intake is for spring, which starts January 10th, and the application deadline is December 14th. You can find more information on how to apply on our website, which is onlinelaw.csuohio.edu. I also put that in the chat, so you can copy and paste that and put it into your browser and find more information. And my contact information is right here. So please feel free to email me or call me with any questions. I know that Brian, Kirk, and Spence will also be more than happy to answer any of your questions if you want to speak to them more in depth about their experience or get any more advice from them. So I will close there. It is exactly 1 o'clock. So I want to truly thank Kirk and Spence and Brian for their great presentation today. It was very informative, and we really hope that you reach out to us with any questions that you have. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.